Welcome, everyone. This is Kristina Mandlakiani, co-founder of Mindvalley and host of Mindvalley Book Club. And welcome to my new book club interview and my new guest and a new topic. So my guest today is Ethan Kross. Welcome, Ethan.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you. And we're going to talk about this wonderful book, Shift. As usual, I have my books on iPad, but you can still find it and recognize it. So we're going to talk about this book, Shift. I did record a little video where I was talking a little bit about the book. So for those of you who come, after our announcements, you know that this book is an emotion regulation in essence. But for those of you who are, who are maybe unexpectedly on this video, then we'll go deeper into the book and you'll find out about it. But first, before we go into the book, I have to give a proper introduction to my guest. So my guest, Ethan Kross, is right now in Michigan, as far as I understand. And Ethan is one of the world's leading authorities on emotion regulation and self-talk. He's also an award-winning author and professor in the University of Michigan and its very famed Department of Psychology, and also Ross School of Business. Thank God I didn't mess this one up. and
You did it perfectly.
Thank you. And also, Ethan has dedicated decades of research into this field, emotional regulation and self-talk. And he has published another book, Chatter. And with his work, he has been published in a lot of national media. So, Ethan, it is a short introduction, but if I have missed out something which is important, now is the time to to
No, you covered it all. Thank you for that generous introduction. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And if you remember, guys, when I was introducing this book, I was telling you, spend your weekend reading it, and you will say thank you to me later. And I did that. I spent the weekend reading it. In fact, guys, you often ask me how many books I read. I read one book a week. Of course, I don't get to read thoroughly this one book a week because there's a lot of life happening. But I have calculated that it takes you, approximately 5 to 8 hours, depending on your speed of reading and how diagonally or how precisely you're reading, to finish a book. So, dedicating a weekend to a book is really quite doable. So why I said that this book, you will thank me for reading it, is because I believe that this is that manual to life that they forgot to give us when we are born in the maternity ward or wherever we are born. I think every child should come with this book. Maybe first the child version in pictures and later the adult version could be shipped. So with that, a little bit ambiguous explanation, the book, in essence, is talking about our emotions, human emotions, and we have emotions throughout life, every single moment of time, probably. And how do we deal with them? And what is the, if I can say so, right way to deal with them? Although if you read the book, you'll find out that there is no absolute answer to that question. So Ethan, I hope I didn't mess up the introduction of your book, but that's how I felt it or how I experienced it. And I also want to say that this book is actually written in a very engaging way because there are stories. As we were going live, I had some issues with computer, and I just said that it reminded me of one of the stories from the book where when you are in stressful situation, how do you deal with your emotions? How do you keep them at an arm's length and actually not make things worse? So with that longish intro, sorry, Ethan, welcome once again. And I guess I'll ask maybe then a very, very simple first question. How, although you do give an answer in your book, I guess, to that question, but how did you venture in that territory, emotions? Because even if you look at psychology as a science, I believe emotions were, as a field of study, neglected for a fairly long time. It wasn't a very, very wide portion of psychology.
Yeah, well, a big influence on my interest in this space I trace back to my grandmother, who I opened the book with a story about. So my grandmother was living in Eastern Poland in the 1940s when the Nazis invaded, and in a very short period of time, her family was slaughtered, and she managed to escape that fate. She lived homeless for several years, ultimately moved to the States, rebuilt a life here. And what was interesting about her, she was a very well-adjusted human being. She was a happy person who lived until she was in her 90s, but she did not like to talk about the atrocities she witnessed during the war. And when I say atrocities, I'm referring to some of the worst things that we can imagine. Seeing your parents be slaughtered and your siblings, and not knowing if that would happen to you um, that day or the next day. Hard for me to wrap my head around that. And as a kid, hearing her story, she was a hero in my mind, and all I wanted to do was talk to her about what happened to her in the war. And she would consistently push those questions aside. No, no, no. Go ride your bike. Go have fun. The only time I witnessed her really get into the details of her experience was once a year when her fellow survivors that lived in the same community as hers in New York, they would organize this Remembrance Day ceremony, and at that event, they would just let go. They would let it all out. And so that was really just puzzling for me why she would not talk about it for much of the year, but then on this one day she would let it go. And so it was always an interest. And then when I got to college, there was a bit of a revolution happening in the sciences with respect to our ability to study emotion. For a very long time, as you intimated, scientists shied away from looking at emotions because what are they? They're these invisible forces. We can't see them. We don't really know what's happening, but our methodologies improved. We began to be able to measure emotions, look at how they're playing out in the brain and the body, and as a result, for the first time in a very long time, we were able to start building the science around this topic, and I dove right in, and for the past 25 years, I've been essentially trying to understand if a person wants to manage their emotions, to think, act, or live better, how can they actually do it? Because we know that emotions, all of them, even the negative ones, can be useful. I like to remind people that anxiety, although it doesn't feel good, it serves a function, right? If there's something important in the future, anxiety helps like signal alarm that says, "Hey, focus on this because your welfare depends on it." That can be useful as long as it's a proportional response. But so often in our lives, we don't experience our emotions proportionally. We experience them too intensely or they last too long. And that's where I think science has a lot to offer with respect to providing people with tools they can use to rein those emotional responses in. And so that's what I've spent my career doing. That's what Shift is about, and Chatter to some extent as well.
So, talking about proportions of emotion, and this question is not directly related to your book. I hope you're fine with that because, everybody who's interested in the book, I warmly recommend you actually read it and go through everything in sequence, the way it's presented, because that will give you the best benefit. But today we have enough a chance to talk to the author, so I want to go a little bit maybe to the edges of some of the discussion. So, you just shared the story of your grandmother, and she prompted you to be interested in the topic, and of course, her history, considering that she survived the Nazi invasion to Poland and everything that came with that, which we probably nowadays cannot even imagine. I remember. A lot of the times, a lot of people who talk about psychology, they also quote Viktor Frankl, who also wrote actually his work in essence based on similar experiences. Now, the question that I want to ask is that from the 21st century, very often when we look back at that, although those experiences give us a lot of information to study or a lot of insight into human nature, but we often also feel a little bit why am I even worried about my little problems? You see people survive something so horrible. So what is the appropriate way to interact with those experiences where you see someone, or even the example of a fire on a space station that I referred to when I had my computer just not switch on properly? How are we to take that? Is that for us to remind us that we are out of proportion, or shouldn't we be this severe on ourselves with our petty problems of 21st century?
Well, I think there are two sides to this question you're posing. One is how do we help ourselves when we find ourselves spinning and magnifying our problems? And then the second is how do we relate to someone who's in that experience? With respect to ourselves, one powerful tool when we find ourselves really struggling, making a mountain out of a molehill, if you will, is to recalibrate, to zoom out and look at that bigger picture. And indeed, when I find myself experiencing an out of proportion emotional response, I will often think about my grandmother's situation, think to myself, wow, it could be a lot worse, Ethan. Your grandmother experienced a lot worse. And so have many millions of people, right, in the history of this planet. So that ability to broaden my perspective is really helpful. Now, at the
Mm,
same time, that tool works for me. I think it is very important when we relate to other people to recognize that the person who is struggling with a big emotion, although it may seem out of proportion to you, given
mm,
all the calamities that we are experiencing right now in this world, to that person in that situation, it feels really big, right? Like I'm amazed at how even myself as an expert in this space, sometimes my default response is, "Oh my God, my kid has a paper cut. What could I, like," and I'm able to correct, but in that moment for that person, it feels all consuming. And a good part of being a good support provider to someone else is to honor that experience, to recognize it, right? Validate it for the other person, empathize with them. But if they come to you for support, then you can work with them to broaden their perspective. You can help them do it. But I don't think we should trivialize other people's
yeah.
emotional responses at first. Does that make sense? Have you ever been in that experience where something small, like, oh, I don't know, maybe a camera not working before a live event feels really big?
Yeah, of course. And I've also heard have people tell me like, "Oh, shut up! That's not even a problem. Look, think of the people suffering. I don't know somewhere else,"
Yeah.
which which doesn't feel good.
No, it doesn't feel good. And I think this is a great segue. One thing I talk about in both of my books, because it is such an important issue, is how do you help someone that you genuinely care about deal with their issues? That is an opportunity we all have as individuals who are part of social networks. We have friends, we have family members. How do we help them when they come to us with our problems? Some people think you should just do what you just described. Oh, just give them the straight advice. Oh, that's ridiculous. You have a roof over your head. It looks like a very nice studio you're in. Like, stop it. Stop it. Like that doesn't work because it insults the individual who is suffering. It invalidates their experience. It makes them feel guilty for having it, all of which can lead them to pull away and actually create friction in their relationship with the person who's just giving them this straight advice. The other way a lot of people think to help is to do the opposite. Just support emotionally the person. Let them talk about it. Oh, I'm so sorry, Christina, that happened. How did you feel? What happened? Tell me more. What did you do next? Those kinds of responses where you get people to just talk about what they felt and are feeling currently, that can actually bring people together and lead them to feel closer because it creates connections between people. But if that's all you do in a conversation, it actually leads to what we call co-rumination. You're
Mm,
just venting about the problem over and over in ways that don't lead you to resolve it. The
mm,
best ways to help someone else is to do both of the things I just described. Step one, you come to me with a problem. I learn about it. I validate. I'm sorry you're feeling that sounds terrible. I'd probably feel the same way if I were in your situation. But then
mm,
after I learn about the situation, you feel like you've really been heard, then we can work together to broaden your perspective. So, okay, but Christina, look, you said before you've done hundreds, if not thousands, of these interviews, right? Like, have you ever not recovered? Has it ever not gone well? So it's a way of broadening. So you want to do those two things in that sequence. Step one,
mm,
support and validate and empathize. Step two, perspective broadening. That is a scientific blueprint for
mm,
both getting good support and providing it. And it's part of what I love so much about the science here. Like, so much of the science that I describe in Shift was built on decades of complex research, but at the end of the day, the take homes for people are very, very clear. And I think that's it's really important because you can act on the science right away.
Hmm. And another aspect about your book that I really loved was um, this approach, which is not absolute in the sense like, this can work, but it can also hurt you, and this can work, which is the opposite, but it can, if it's taken too much, it can also hurt you. But we'll go back to that a little bit because I wanted to twist my initial question a little bit, if you are fine with that. Um,
Twist and turn away. You can take it wherever you like.
So another question that I want to ask is, for example, Masha, who was helping us in the beginning, she comes from Ukraine, and her mom is visiting her right now, and her mom lives in Kiev, which is still being heavily bombed by Russia, and the world is a volatile place. I've been to Ukraine many times on work business trips. I've been to Russia. It's like a different planet nowadays, if you think about that. But the same things happen in other places in the world where a lot of our audiences might be, including in US, in fact. So what do you do? Why I'm asking this question is that sometimes life is life can turn in ways that we can never imagine right now. So how to, if you discover yourself in the circumstances which are so different from your everyday life that you're used to in decades of your life, like the war started not accident, sorry, suddenly, the war started suddenly. How do you uh, go through that experience without getting crushed? I know maybe it's a very loaded question, but if there is any simple way to answer it.
Well, um, there's no simple way to answer it.
Yeah.
Well, here's what we know. What we know is that there's huge variability in terms of the people who do not get crushed versus those who do. We also know that there's huge variability in the tools that people benefit from. One mistake that we've made in the past is in assuming that there are specific tools that people should use to get through adversity. We made this mistake following the 9/11 attacks, where everyone thought that, not everyone, but many people thought that the key to helping people recover from those attacks was to force them to talk about their experiences. Turns out that talking about our emotional experiences benefits some people, but it doesn't benefit others. In some cases, it can actually be harmful. Um, and the reason why that is complex, but the broader point is there are lots of ways that people can survive. There are lots of tools that exist in the toolbox. I think the best that I can do as a scientist who knows his space is to give people those tools and give them the opportunity to start experimenting with them to find the ones that work best for them. Um, I don't know. Do you exercise in a gym
Yes, I
or
do. I
okay,
do boxing,
you do
which helps
boxing. Okay.
me, mate.
So you do boxing, other people do yoga and Pilates or resistance training, and even within those different sports, there are lots of ways that you could practice those sports. I used to box when I was in high school and college, and um, there's time you could spend on the speed bag and the heavy bag. There's sparring, there's push-ups, there's a whole sort of different kinds of exercise and training regimens that people engage in. Different regimens work for different people. If I were to sample my inner circle of 5 or 6 friends, all of them exercise, all of them work out, all of them do different things to achieve their goals. Mental fitness is similar, right? So
Mm,
step one, we need to go to the gym and I need to show you how to use every machine. Here's what this machine does, and here's how you can use it in a way that will help and not harm you, right? And then after we do that, I can give you a prescription of sorts, right? Like, why don't you try doing these 4 exercises on this day and these six, and then alternate back and forth? And then you try and see how that's serving you. And you may find, yeah, I don't really like that exercise. Actually, that hurts. Doesn't work for me. These other ones I really like. Let me put these together. And then after a couple of weeks, you may even find, you know what? This one that was working, I'm
mm,
not feeling it anymore. So let me switch to this other one. The latest science suggests that mental fitness works very similarly. So there are probably like 30 different tools I talk about in
yeah.
Shift. You need to A, familiarize yourself with them, and then B, start experimenting. So to go back to the war in the Ukraine, I have no idea which specific combinations of tools are going to work for people. I do think that giving people those toolboxes is going to make a difference because
Mm,
it's going to give them resources to think about their lives, which are now under assault, more productively in ways that can help them muster it. Whether that's expressive writing and building advisory network and mental time travel, or performing a ritual, practicing strategic avoidance, that is something that folks have to start experimenting with on the ground.
Mhm. And I know I asked the question about war, which is probably one of the most extreme cases that can happen to people. But even in Western countries, we sometimes lose jobs, lose livelihoods. I believe a lot of people are being thrown out of countries nowadays. We lose our loved ones. So that's why I wanted to ask the question where we feel at times in our life where our circumstances are so big that there's no escape.
Well, and I think in those kinds of situations, I do think that recalibrating by zooming out can be really helpful, right? Like, um, there's always a way of zooming out, and like my grandma, I get rejected, or I have a something stressful at work or in business. Like, well, I could have just lost everything. My family could be dead, right? Like, that puts things in perspective. If you don't have an experience like that personally, like, you can refer to historical experiences, right? Like, think about slavery and other kinds of, like, Europe in the Middle Ages, right? Like the bubonic plague during COVID. Like, for COVID, that was something. Like, COVID didn't was not fun. Well, it could be a lot worse. It could be the bubonic plague, right?
Oh wow.
Decades decimated. So there's
Yeah.
always ways of zooming out, and I think that can be helpful.
Mm.
Um, attention, deploying your attention strategically can also be really useful, right? Like, um, we can think about our circumstances endlessly, but sometimes if it's not something you can control, diverting your attention away to think about other things can be useful as well. So lots of different tools, and those are just two examples of dozens that people can practice in the moment, um, to help themselves.
So, thank you for this answer. And I want to come back to this wonderful book and show it to you guys again. So, one more thing that I liked about the book is that some of the solutions are actually a little unusual, maybe, and do not require a lot of work, if I can say so. For example, I really loved the parts about your senses, how you can use your senses to shift your emotions. And since reading this part, I've been more attuned to bird singing. Thank God, it's summer here in Estonia, so I hear bird singing a lot. But so if you are interested in reading this book, there will be first. Scientific explanation why it works, and also some very practical tools for you to use. Another one, which was I think very cool, was about the place, how the places where we are, uh, how they affect our emotions. Now, the question is a little bit tied to what you were talking today already. So there is this toolbox, and very often when we talk about emotions, uh, I love the analogies that you use, but use the analogy that there is this hammer, and we've been given a hammer, but when you need to fix something, you need other tools, not just a hammer. So when you have that toolbox, how do you know which tool to use when? And does it work or does it not? How do you find your way among those tools? Again, the question is not strictly about the book, but I'm
This
using
is
the
no, this
over
is the
here.
great. I mean, this is where this is the invitation I offer to folks at the end of the book, which is, now that you know about all these tools, now we have to start doing the both hard, but I think also interesting and exciting work of figuring out, when do these tools work best for us. And so for me, I can tell you that that's just trial and error. It's experimenting. It's hey, the next time you find yourself in a rut, let's give some of these tools a shot. So let's take an example of sensation. Sensory tools, which are tools that we have lots of experience with, but often take for granted. So music is a powerful one. Um, I tell a story of stumbling on this tool when my daughter was in a bit of a funk on a Saturday before a soccer game, and a song came on the radio, and it lifted our spirits. And so that happened just so quickly and so powerfully. It just dawned upon me that, wow, our senses are so powerful. So now I have songs that, when I am feeling sad or anxious or angry, and if I don't want to feel those ways, I go into that playlist and I pipe the I just listen to those songs, and it pushes my emotion, it shifts it into a different territory. I've learned that contingency, and I'm now aware of it. I've also learned that it's really powerful for me to try to give myself advice like I would a friend, using actually talking to myself like I would speak to someone else. So I address myself using my name and you silently. Ethan, why are you worried about this? You've thought about this 1,000 times. You've confirmed this with everyone. So what's the deal here? Move on, right? That is oftentimes what I just modeled. That's the advice I'd give to a friend who is ruminating about something, but that I'm incapable of generating myself. So
Mm.
that's distant self-talk. So I use that a lot. I've learned, I know what these tools are, I know that they benefit me, and so I use them automatically now. That is what we can all do, but you have to first learn about the tools and then try them out. It's no different from the exercise, the physical exercise, to go back to that
Mhm.
metaphor. I know that push-ups and sit-ups work really well. I know how to do them, and I do them. I know that pull-ups actually don't work very well for me. They strain a shoulder injury. I also just don't like them. I find them very painful. So I do something else. I've learned that, and it's second nature, right? The same possibility exists for managing our emotional being, our emotional life. The big difference is we have been socialized to understand how to manage our physical body. We have not when it comes to our emotional health, and that's where I think the book can help.
Yeah, that's why I say it's the manual that they forgot to give us at our birth.
Yeah, I love
For me,
that. Why do we choose sad music when we are sad? Great question, Alex. Um, so this is an example of, not only are we sometimes blind to the impact, the potential that our senses and music has on our emotional lives. Sometimes we actually avail ourselves of that tool, but we do it in a way that works against us rather than for us. So there's this phenomenon called the emotional congruency effect. And what it refers to is we seek out experiences that match our current mood state. So if you're feeling sad, you may have had the experience, as I'm presuming Alex has, and I have, and probably you as well, Christina, that we listen, we're feeling sad, so let's listen to some sad music, not happy music, which takes us deeper into that emotional state. Now, one of the central premises of the book is that all of our emotions are useful in the right proportions. So sadness has a functionality to it. We experience sadness in the presence of some loss. Something has happened. We can't bring that experience back. That person, we're rejected, we're fired. So what sadness motivates us to do is turn our attention inward to make new meaning out of that experience. Right? Like life is different. I've got to reframe how I think about life and myself to move on. If there's a
Mm.
functionality to that, well, let me seek out and go even deeper into the sadness, and music can help me do that. So if the sadness is working for you, keep doing that. But if your goal is to not feel sad and you find yourself beginning to listen to sad music, then you can pivot, you can shift, put on the happy music instead.
I have a bizarre experience. So yesterday, my daughter insisted on going for a concert, and when I showed up at a concert, I realized it's one of the biggest bands in the world nowadays, Imagine Dragons. So this morning, yesterday I was at this concert, and this morning I saw quite a few people write messages that it was both music and therapy at the same time, including one of the newspapers here in Estonia. And I was thinking of the book that I was reading. I mean, your book, how music sometimes can be the therapy. It's just a bizarre experience that happened.
Well, but music, like I spent a whole chapter on the senses,
Yeah,
music being one example. They are such an underutilized tool, but if you think about it, we've been relying on music to shift our emotions for likely as long as we've had instruments. It's an incredibly powerful shifter. The right song can push us from one state to another instantly. How hard is that to do using other tools? It's much harder. Like think about militaries in the past. They would have bands accompany them to war. Why?
yeah.
To channel the emotional experiences of the group. When you ask people, why do you listen to music? Almost 100% of people say, I listen to music because I like the way it makes me feel. It is a fundamentally emotional experience, and yet we don't strategically leverage it nearly as much as we could.
Mm.
Touch, taste, smell, these are all emotional experiences. Like, we
Yeah.
spray ourselves with emotion regulation sprays every day to influence how other people feel about us and how we feel about ourselves. We slack our armpits in some places with scents. I mean, it's remarkable. It's just waiting to be used.
And that's what I really like about the book, because of course you guys know that I love psychology and I love talking about emotions, but this book actually takes such a wide sweep of all the different factors that influence our emotions, and you realize that actually, you know, you don't have to just do therapy. And there's nothing like against therapy, of course, but uh, there are so many simple, accessible ways to shift your emotions immediately, and that's the beauty of the book. And we spent quite a bit of time right now on music and the senses, but this is just one of many different tools in the toolbox that this book offers. And of course we won't be able to go into all the tools of this toolbox. That's why I invite you to read the book. But what I want to ask, and I'm coming back to the beginning of the book, you do mention in the book that there is evidence that people who can regulate their emotions are more successful in life. Could you go a little deeper explaining how is this functioning? Because current paradigm in this world where we live in is that for success in any area, all you need to do is just hard work, hustle, you know, work harder than everybody else. Yet you point to research that says that your emotional regulation is an important factor in that equation.
Yeah, I would argue and there's data to support this, a $1 trillion factor. So how does the ability to manage our emotions um, impact our work life? There are at least three different pathways. Number one, we know that the inability to manage your emotions affects your capacity to think and perform optimally. The ability to think and perform optimally being central to being effective at work. One example of that, have you ever had the experience of trying to read a book while you are ruminating about something? You read the passage, you read the chapter, but you don't remember anything you've read. So what's happening there is your ability to focus is limited. We have limited attentional resources. I'm gesturing up here because some part of our brain supports those executive resources, and big emotions consume our attention, leaving very little left over to allow us to do the things we often need to do at work. So big emotions run wild. They undermine our ability to think and perform. They can also create enormous friction in our relationships with other people. They can lead us to take our frustrations out on other people. They can lead us to talk incessantly about our problems with other people in ways that lead them to pull away. Being able to have good, high functioning social relationships is very important to most um, areas of work. So that's another pathway. Then the third is we know that emotions run wild can affect your subjective well-being, your mood, which has implications for how you show up at work, how motivated you are. It also has implications for your physical health. The links between emotion dysregulation and poor physical health are quite striking. And so now you're talking about lost productivity because of sick days not coming into work. So
Mm.
emotion dysregulation, I would argue, and with research to back me up, it undermines the three core pillars that undergird optimal functioning: the ability to think and perform, relationships, health, and well being.
Mm.
It's a huge, huge problem. The giant mystery for me is why we're not devoting more resources to
Mm.
equip people to be much more emotionally fit. This isn't just about helping people feel good, which is an important end in its own right. If you care about an organization's bottom line, if you care about being able to do well at school, you need to be able to manage your emotions.
Mm.
We just want one other little bit, Christina. This is unpublished research. We've developed this curriculum that teaches high school kids about how to manage their emotions using a lot of the tools I talk about in the book. And we ran this large, rigorous, controlled study where we randomly assigned people to either high school kids, thousands of them, to either learn about this material or they learned about another topic. What we
Mhm.
found is that the more kids learned about this material, the better they performed on an exam that tested their knowledge of these emotion control tools. At the end of the study versus before, the more their GPA improved over
Yeah.
time. And those improvements in GPA persisted up to a year after the study was over. So that right there is direct evidence that these skills don't just matter for your subjective well-being, but they have clear behavioral implications as well.
So I know it might be a little bit unfair question, but considering that emotion regulation is actually science, it's not based in any kind of values like like religion, for example, or
Yeah.
spirituality. So, and it is also very important for our well-being and for our obviously productivity. Yet in schools we teach PE and drama and music, but not emotional regulation, which should be science along with, I don't know, biology and physics. Why do you have any idea why is this happening? Is it going to change?
I think it is changing, not fast enough, but I think we are beginning to see more receptivity to this, and I'm hopeful that this book and these kinds of events just help propel those kinds of changes forward. Um, we're rapidly getting to a point where we're optimizing on all these other dimensions, on cognitive performance, on physical aptitude, where, one of, I think, the remaining areas for excelling is understanding how to optimize in this area of life. And we now know that this is not just a luxury area where you can invest only if you have resources and things are going well, but it's actually essential across the board for people of all stripes, no matter what they're doing. And so I think the culture is shifting, and that's it's I can't think of a more exciting time to be in this space. I mean, you've been operating here for a while too. Have you noticed the same kind of shift in terms of receptivity?
So because I'm a little bit more on the fringe, considering that we teach mostly mindfulness and a little bit more value based, as in terms of
Yeah.
everybody agrees on the same values in this sense, value based. So I'm kind of new to psychology, and honestly, I think it's exciting time. You know what I want to ask as well? I'm sorry that I'm going into other topics, but
That's okay.
is there um, any research that shows a correlation between our emotional regulation capabilities and our, let's say, socioeconomic status? Because, and why I'm asking that is that in my life I've seen illegal immigrants who are actually doing pretty well and very happy people who who are miserable. Is there
Oh
a
yeah, I know, absolutely. Um, I'm not citing a specific study here, but we know that there are people who are doing really well financially and really poorly financially in life who are struggling, and the opposite is true as well. So this is a skill that is um, learnable and relevant to people across the socioeconomic spectrum.
Mm,
Um, and there are lots of folks who are just, they do struggle. It's a little bit more complicated though, Christina, because in addition to being good or bad in emotion regulation, you can also have specific areas of life where you're really good or bad. So I can be really, really good at managing my emotions when it comes to work-related conflict, but really, really bad when it comes to personal conflict.
mm,
And so there's nuance to that question. We all have these profiles of capacity where we can excel in one context, but not necessarily in another.
mm. Yeah, I guess what I was trying to lead to is how much resource is necessary for you to master that area. Is that, or is it something which, even if you're poor, you can still figure out, or you can still learn to be happy?
Abs- absolutely, without question. And in fact, there's research which shows that um, you can take like folks, if you take folks who are low SES and you look at them, um, those who are skilled at managing their emotions actually are much more resilient than those who are not. And so it doesn't matter who I'm talking to.
Mm.
We can give them these tools. We
Mhm.
have to give them the tools. That is the most important thing.
How do you know if you're good or bad at emotion regulation? Because obviously, not feeling anything is not the sign that you're good at emotion regulation. For example, I'm never angry, or or the other way around. What are the telltale signs that you're maybe not so good that you as you might think, or the other way around? Like, how do you know where you stand here?
Sure. I mean, the question really is the emotion serving you well? And recognizing that sometimes a negative emotion can actually be useful. The way I try to figure out if like anger or sadness or anxiety is becoming out of proportion, is this now helping me like work towards my bigger picture goals, or is it undermining my ability to live the life that I want to live? I have a friend who's dealing with a lot of conflict in a relationship, and I've asked him like, "Are you happy with your life over the course of weeks and months?" And if the answer is no, well, now this emotion, the frustration, it's no longer serving you well. So, is the emotion undermining your ability to live the life that you want to live? That is the core question that I use to guide me. And if I say, you know what, this anxiety, I'm not benefiting any more from it, then I intervene. But sometimes, like if I have a really important talk or business engagement, and I need to be really alert to things that could go wrong and prepare, anxiety is serving me well here. So that's number one. The second thing to think about is a question often comes up: how do you know when to use these tools that we're talking about versus to maybe escalate and get more professional forms of help? If you find yourself struggling with an emotional experience and you're not living the life you want to live for more than, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks, that's a sign to maybe um, ratchet up the support by talking to someone and getting some help.
Mm.
Um, it doesn't mean the help you're going to get is qualitatively different. It means it's going to be in a more concentrated way that can be useful. With respect to this question on the screen, how long does it take to attain a new emotional state using music? Martin, what I love about that work is it can be a matter of seconds. That is how quickly our senses operate, right? Sensation, part of the way sensation works, sensation being the process through which we make sense, we take in information from the world. Like if you smell something that smells really good or bad, boom, instantly you're having an emotional response. Taste works the same way, so does sound, right? Chalkboard, nails on a chalkboard, instantly you feel bad. The right music can instantly push you in a different direction too. Now, those shifts in emotion from music and the senses, they're not going to solve your biggest problems per se, but they may put you in a position to then use additional tools to make some traction.
Mm. Thank you for this answer. And just to maybe say a few more words about this book. So this book is going to give you the toolkit. It's not a miraculous pill. It's a toolkit, and I think that's the beautiful thing because since I also don't believe in absolutes, it will be up to you to choose which tool you need right now. Do you need to screw in the wall or hammer in a nail? It will be in your hands to decide which tool you will need. But yeah, if you haven't gotten yet, get the book. I want to ask my guests who are online right now to send a heart to my guest. I know it will be in chat, it won't be emojis as it used to be in Zoom, but who cares? And if you're watching it in recording, then leave a heart under the video. I think all this love still matters, even if it's delayed in time and space. And the question I want to ask Ethan is, how would you like this book to change the world?
I would love this book to change the world by making people um, better equipped to live the lives they want to live. The way I think about what I do is I study the science that explains how you can align your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors with your goals. It's a fancy way of saying like helping people get what they want out of life. And if this book can help people do that with respect to their emotional lives, I'd be a very content human being.
Thank you so much, and I personally hope that it will become, a reading, obligatory reading in school sooner or later. Because, we as parents, and I'm a parent of teenagers, we sometimes want our kids to be happy, but maybe what we should want is for them to figure out emotion regulation, and then they'll decide if they want to be happy. And finally. Dear friends, if you're signed up to Mindvalley Book Club, thank you for that. Stay in touch. And as you know, after this, we're going to share the video with a lot of useful information from this interview. But I deliberately didn't go too deep into the book so that if you get yourself the book, you're going to discover quite a lot of interesting new stuff. And it's actually very well structured. So it will be very practically useful for you. Now, if you're not signed up to Mindvalley Book Club and you're here by accident, then do it now, because every week we share the best new releases of the previous week. And of those, we invite one author of the best book, in our opinion, to an interview. We read the books, so we do not recommend the books unless we read them and we wholeheartedly want to recommend them. And as you know, I have access to the world's best authors. So thank you, Ethan, for joining us. Thank you, everyone who's watching live, and those who are going to watch online. Thank you as well. And I see you in a week.